Hello, fellas, and thank you so much for tuning in to Feed the Dark podcast. Really appreciate it as always. And this week we are going to talk about a pretty famous novel, or novella, I should say. It's pretty short and the font is pretty big. It's pretty easy to read. It's by a famous author named Ira Levin, and it is called The Stepford Wives. Now, if you are a horror fan like me, I would be pretty shocked to learn if you weren't too familiar with the story of this, but reading the novella is incredibly worthwhile. But it is pretty famous because of also the film adaptations that came out, which we will get into in a minute. But reading this for the first time, it it was very interesting because it reminded me of the only other Ira Levin novel I've read, which is Rosemary's Baby. Rosemary's Baby, without getting too much into it, is about a woman who believes there is a mass conspiracy. And she is gaslit by everyone around her, telling her, no, everything's fine, blah, blah. This story is extremely similar. It is about a character named Joanna and Walter, her husband, who move from New York City to Connecticut to a town named Stepford Wives. Wow. And she is also gaslit by everyone there. So she moves there, and the town is just a hilarious satire of basically a 1950s commercial or a 1950s TV show of what suburban life is. The women are so amazingly and shockingly vapid, and the only thing they care about is how they look, or cleaning up the house, or cooking a meal in time before their husband gets home. And all the husbands are just into men shit, like fucking hilarious over masculine activities, and it is kind of funny. This novel is considered a satire for that reason, although it does eventually get extremely creepy. So Joanna is an extremely strong female character who talks about how important being a strong woman is, both in her inner monologue and in her dialogue with other people. And Walter seems pretty supportive of this throughout the whole thing. Although he does eventually join a group in the town called the Men's Association, which is a men's only group, which bothers Joanna because Joanna is a little annoyed that there's no women's group or nothing to advance the state of woman in the town of Stepford, or nothing that she could join. And Walter in the beginning kind of assures her that, like, listen, I'm for women's rights too. Well, the only way to change it is from the inside. Yeah, this is pretty messed up. I agree. I'm on your side. But I'm going to join the men's association. And you don't really know what the men's association consists of because Walter is gone for much of the book. And it's all from the perspective of Joanna, who is dealing with this situation. So she's kind of left in the dark, and it's interesting to see this woman who has her own thoughts and feelings and interests speak with women who are just like so empty and who only talk about cleaning. It is a dark comedy for a little bit, not like the 2004 film. Once again, we'll get into that a little bit. Oh my god, fucking kill me. But it is funny and with a more serious tone. Now, I don't want to spoil this if you haven't seen or read it. Once again, it's a very popular story, so I'd be shocked. But if you do have any interest in this, please tune out during my countdown, and you could tune back in when I give my full review at the end, because I fucking hate when things are spoiled for me. So, 3, 2, 1. Joanna's not fucking crazy. Everyone is a fucking robot. It's crazy. And it's because it's such a short novella. Most of the time it's just build up. So this isn't revealed until much later. There are instances which sort of lead you to believe that she's not crazy. For instance, this character that I didn't even want to mention before the spoilers because I felt like I couldn't really talk about her without spoiling it. She meets a character named Bobby, who is just this fucking laid back, awesome character, the only other woman in Stepford, the only other one who just like wears sweatpants and it's like, yeah, this is fucking weird. Why do they only care about cleaning? Like, what is this? The 1950s? No, it's worse than that actually. But so before we even get into what happens to Bobby, right before that incident, she researches all the women in Stepford and realizes that all of them were women of high power beforehand. They were CEOs, or they were, authors, or they were women who cared about the liberation of women, who had lives for themselves that didn't just include making the house a better place. And it's that was the first sign. Although still at this point of the novel, you're like, okay, this is incredibly strange. Although there are some other signs which maybe it's not some fucking mass conspiracy, and maybe the satire will be that this is just how suburban life is. Growing up in the suburbs, I mean, this is obviously a much exaggerated version of it, but I did get some joy out of some of the humor in this, because there is some truth to some families. Once again, not all. I grew up in the suburbs. I would like to think that my family is not quite like that at all. But there are some families that do fit into that stereotype. So it was a little funny. So that could have been the twist. At least that's kind of where, trying to take myself out of it and trying to forget the films. I was like, okay, maybe this is where it's going. But no, Bobby, who is just as much of a person as Joanna is, and maybe even more sarcastic and possibly even more vitriolic in her speech. She wakes up one day and Joanna goes to visit Bobby, and Bobby just all of a sudden turns from this like fucking laid back, sarcastic, like actual person who has actual interest to this Stepford woman, someone with an apron on, who is just cleaning like someone like on fucking Adderall, like nonstop. And that's where that is really the turning point where you're like, what? Wait, what? Well, I just spoke to you yesterday. You were against all of it. She's like, no, I gotta make dinner in time. I have to make sure my husband's okay. I have to take care of the kids. I have to, like, it's just like, she didn't, I don't believe they explicitly said she was acting like a robot. Spoiler alert, she's a robot. Her actions emulated that of a robotic entity. So from then on, there's only a few pages left now. This is the very end. Once again, this is a very slow burn for a novel of this size. Novella, excuse me. Yeah, so the next day, she kind of freaks out and is like, I gotta get the fuck out of here. So she talks to her husband, and he agrees. And he's like, yeah, you know what? You're not happy? Whatever. I'm here for you, baby. I'm here for you. I just want to do what's right by you, okay? I'm going to gaslight you a little bit more. Let's pack up the kids. Let's go over stuff. Let's go tomorrow even. Fuck waiting. Let's go tomorrow. Who cares if we even have a place to go to? Let's leave immediately because I care. So the next day, she can't find her kids. The men's association surrounds her, and she's screaming like, you turned them into fucking robots. You guys are assholes. And everyone's like, no, you're crazy. It's like the last 3 or 4 pages of a book. And everyone's like, no, you're still fucking crazy. Fuck you. Like, if you want to, you know what? You don't believe us? Let's go back and we'll see if Bobby bleeds. You don't believe us? We'll show you that Bobby's not a robot. We'll show you that she bleeds like a human. So they bring her back to the home. Upstairs, the music is blasting so loud to cover up the screams of Joanna. And then Bobby holds a knife to Joanna, and it is one of the creepiest scenes. It's not necessarily scary, but it's just like super eerie and like amazingly uncomfortable as she realizes that this is happening to her. And oh man, and then it cuts and she is this is not a happy ending. And she is just a woman of Stepford. That's it. Joanna becomes a robot. This is one of my favorite downers in a novella that I've read in a long time. The critique of society and everything during that time is it's fascinating. Now, this is why I wanted to talk about the movies. I think both movies are worth talking about. So, the 1975 version, when that came out, it got a mixed reaction from feminists, which I find to be shocking because I mean, now it's, revered as a great film and a great feminist commentary, but I'm kind of confused how this was even interpreted as an as a bad film for feminism. I mean, some of them said that like, oh, I think some of the critiques from some of the famous feminists were like, oh, this is just saying that like, that men and women can never get along, and that's not what it's saying at all. And time has shown that. I highly recommend the 1975 version. It's extremely similar to the novella, much like the Roman Polanski film of Rosemary's Baby is extremely similar to Rosemary's Baby. Good for Ira Levin having film adaptations that actually represent his work, which is not something I could say for many other authors on the planet. But I think it's a very interesting novella, especially one that came out in 1973, because this has such a strong stance on what it's trying to say. It is not a novel where there are hidden meanings where you have to look deep into what the author is trying to say, or something that you have to decode, or anything like that. It's pretty straightforward and blunt in its message, but I think that it has to be. And I think that sometimes books don't have to be very esoteric, and I appreciated the straightforwardness of this, and I think it took bravery to write this book in this way, especially in the early 70s. So I really credit Ira Levin, especially as a male author, for writing books that are pro-feminism but in a way that is very interesting, and also provides unique stories and characters that feel real, and satire and black comedy that is subtle and pretty fucking hilarious. It was like a really funny, creepy read, which is pretty hard to do. So I applaud this man. Now, because there's not too much to say about the 75 film other than the weird critiques that it got, and other than the exposure that it allowed for this novella, but the fucking 2004 version with Matthew Broderick and Nicole Kidman. Oh my fucking god! I saw this shit in theaters, and that was my first exposure to the story in general. And I really wish it wasn't. I was only 14 at the time of 2004, so it's not like it was like this fucking it stuck in my mind or anything. I kind of saw it. I was like, it was a little weird, whatever. But I just rewatched this 2 days ago just for the show. You're welcome. The things I do for myself. I'd rather skin myself alive than watch that fucking movie again. Oh my god. They took all the creepiness out, and they tried to make it a comedy. And admittedly, there were like one or two lines that made me chuckle. So good for them. But it was just, I don't even know how to explain it. It was just the most confused tone I've ever seen, probably ever, in a movie. It starts out and Nicole Kidman is a fucking jackass because she runs this like billionaire TV show where she like ruins people's lives. And okay, this is Johanna, by the way. This is a person who's like a strong feminist who we're supposed to like give a shit about and connect with, and our heroine throughout this entire experience. And the opening scene is her running a television show where she ruins marriages, and she only cares about money. I mean, when she gets fired, she's just like, once again, she is a satire of someone who is just this fucking rich, like uppity, doesn't care about anyone else kind of woman. So that in itself is very strange. And then there are one-liners throughout the whole thing. But the real thing I want to talk about, the only reason I'm bringing this up, my god, the ending of the 2004 version has, I think, two twists. The first twist is that Christopher Walken is a robot. So I don't even want to fucking build up to this shit, but Christopher Walken, by the way, is the head of the men's association in this movie. So he's the one leading everything, and he is the one who controls the town. So towards the end, what happens is Matthew Broderick switches off everything that's controlling all the women, and Christopher Walken gets mad, and then he tries to hit Matthew Broderick, and then his wife, who is a Stepford woman, tries to stop it, but Nicole Kidman gets there first and knocks his head off, and it turns out that Christopher Walken is a robot. At first, you're kind of like, okay, where the fuck is this going? And then the wife explains that she created this whole society because Christopher Walken was cheating on her, and then she wanted to go back to this period of time where, like, oh, men were men and women were women, and it really doesn't make any sense. I mean, there are like 3 other plot twists that just make her the villain, but at the same time, they imprison all the men in Stepford. I know this doesn't make any sense. The reason why it doesn't make any sense is because the movie doesn't make any fucking sense. Oh my god. Please erase this movie from my brain. One other critique I had, we don't know if there are chips in their brains or if they're robots. For instance, when they hit off Christopher Walken's head, he was clearly a robot, and there were sparks flying out, and there were a few other moments that led you to believe that the woman in Stepford were robots. For instance, there was one scene where the man swiped a credit card in his wife's mouth and cash came out like a robot. And there was another instance where a woman was malfunctioning during a dance and there were sparks coming out and she was like twitching like fucking this and like, convulsing and freaking out like a robot. And her body was twitching in ways that no human body could. But the ending, as mentioned before, Matthew Broderick turns off a switch because he feels bad about what he did, and everyone goes back to normal. And we're saying, oh no, it was a chip in their brain. What? What the fuck are you talking about, movie? Why? Just please choose one. Choose one and stick to it. Anyway, the movie's dog shit. Please don't see the 2004 film. But I would recommend the novel, and I would, if you don't want to read 100-something pages because you're lazy as fuck, please watch a 1975 film. I recommend it highly. It's not one of my favorite novellas, but it is. I think it's worth your time. You could finish it in a night or two. It's definitely. It's fascinating. Ira Levin his style of writing is so quick that I think it's definitely worth checking out. I would recommend Rosemary's Baby a little bit more. I do intend on checking out more Ira Levin's work, but I would give this probably like a 7 to 8 out of 10. I just really appreciate the commentary and how it was presented. I appreciate the slow build-up. I appreciate how every character is well realized, and I like that the ending was creepy and satirical at the same time. Once again, thank you so much for tuning in to Feed the Dark podcast. I will check you guys in a bit. Check me out on YouTube and soon to be Libsyn and Spotify and Apple Music.